The Alberta government has opened a support centre in Edmonton for people removed from homeless encampments. The announcement comes as the city's police service, says it plans to take down encampments at an accelerated pace. Just last week, police dismantled 8 homeless encampments they deemed high risk. All this as the city of Edmonton declares a housing and homelessness emergency.
The increase in the vulnerability of low-income and middle-income Edmontonians to not have a decent place to call home, that will lead them to possibly lead them to into houselessness. 47,000 households. That number will grow by another 10,000 households if we don't get a handle on this. The people that are living in core housing need. That is why it is an emergency.
Alberta's Seniors, Community and Social Services Minister Jason Nixon joins me now. Minister Nixon, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on. This
centre you've opened in Edmonton, what are you hoping this does for the people who were removed from the encampments?
We want to make sure that we provide very quick, efficient access to the entire power of the social services system here in the city of Edmonton, the province of Alberta, as the Edmonton Police Service does their work in encampments. And so this provides us the ability to be able to bring all that together. That's including, services within my Department of Social Services, as well as the Department of Health, our Alberta Health Services, mental health and addictions, and the tremendous nonprofit social services sector here in the city of Edmonton, all into one location to give individuals, as they come out of these very dangerous encampments, complete access to the system and to resources that can help them both in an emergency shelter capacity, but also hopefully to long-term solutions for why they are homeless or the circumstances that each individual may find themselves in.
Walk me through some of the choices you made in setting this up. This is temporary. As I understand it, it closes at 4:30 every day. And it only came after the city of Edmonton declared a homelessness emergency. So walk me through the timeline and the setup here.
One clarification, this process was being undertaken long before the city of Edmonton declared a state of emergency. We started to work on it in November. We were waiting for the results of the court case in regards to encampments here in the province of Alberta, so we knew what the Edmonton Police Service would be doing. But we will have the triage center open. It does, as far as access to outside services, that ends at 4:30 each day as far as being able to connect to services. But it also has a 30-bed shelter within that location, so anybody coming in from encampments as they are closed down will stay there. They won't have to leave. They'll have access to showers, food, and a place to sleep. And then obviously in the morning, we will continue with connecting them to other services. We will have buses at locations as the Edmonton Police Service takes down encampments with officials from my department, the ability to be able to take people's personal belongings with them on the bus, including pets. They will then be brought to that navigation center, as we call it, where they will immediately have access to showers, food, safety, health care if needed. And then we'll go through a process to be able to go to different stations, as I said, for whether it be health issues, addiction issues, or housing issues, and other issues like that, to be able to immediately get access to help.
Your colleague, Public Safety Minister Mike Ellis, has referred, I believe, to some of these encampments as gang run, was the language that he used. I mean, how do you deal with something like that in terms of getting people, what does he mean by that, and how do you deal with something like that in terms of finding people a place somewhere in the social services system?
So what we've seen back from the Edmonton Police Service is that a lot of gangs have taken over the operation of the encampments inside the city of Edmonton. They are putting up their tags and their markings and making clear that it's their territory. We're hearing stories of being charged even to access these tents or to other resources that are within these encampments. The other thing, when the police are going into the encampments, they're seeing a tremendous amount of weapons. They've also ran into individuals who are being sexually trafficked in circumstances like that. And that's what Minister Ellis is referring to. Now, my department, the Department of Social Services, can't handle that. That's a law enforcement issue. So Edmonton Police Service is going in and handling that, dismantling the encampments. And what's happening is my team is then coming in to provide services to the individuals that are in these encampments that are often being victimized by gangs and other individuals as well on the street.
You can see the safety concerns of the encampment, but you've also heard from people like the Edmonton Coalition on Housing and Homelessness that argue as well that the shelter system isn't that safe, and that people have said, they've described it as frightening and dangerous, and this is why they don't want to go into the shelters. So how do you deal with that challenge, Minister?
Well, a couple things. I will say the Coalition on Homelessness, there was just a Court of King's Bench judge who made clear that he did not even think they were advocating for any of the individuals that are in encampments or on the streets. But that said, I would say two things. One is that certainly what we are seeing inside encampments, which is including people even burning to death inside their tents because of unsafe heat sources, people being raped, and other violent crimes is certainly not what is taking place inside our shelter system. So if anybody is advocating that those type of encampments are safer than our emergency shelter system, they're wrong. And I want to make clear to all of the homeless population, there is a safe, warm place for them to be. We have heard things and requests and advice from those who live on the streets on ways that we can change our shelter system to operate different, to be more effective. And we've done that here in the province of Alberta. We moved all of our shelters to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We've made accommodations for things like pets, made sure that we've required proper storage for everybody's property as they come into these shelters. We've invested in security in our shelter system. And we've also really focused on opening up specialized shelters, including Indigenous-run shelters and women-only shelters. Here in the city of Edmonton, we just opened up 2 new Indigenous shelters that are run by nearby nations and funded by the provincial government, but run by those nations. And that's something that we heard loud and clear about, the need for culturally appropriate shelter systems to help with the First Nation population here in the city of Edmonton.
But Minister, criticisms of the safety of shelter systems, it's not unique to Edmonton, it's not unique to Alberta. We've heard this in every jurisdiction because, you know, it's mass housing of transient populations in congregate settings, which comes with a level of risk. So given that that's there and people are concerned about it, I mean, what if people refuse to go to the Temporary Navigation and Support Center or don't want to go into a shelter? How do you deal with it?
At the end of the day, we're not going to force anybody to go into our shelter system. They're not going to be able to continue to stay in these encampments. The City of Edmonton and the Edmonton Police Service have made that clear. And so our job is to provide the best access that we can to that system for those who need it and want it. We've also added outreach teams, including Indigenous outreach teams, to try to help bridge some of those gaps about concerns with shelters, to also inform the street population about the significant changes that have happened here in the Alberta system going forward. But when it comes to encampments versus emergency shelter, there's just no comparison on the safety level. I mean, we are seeing people burn to death in our encampments. And that's not happening in our shelter system. So while we can continue to focus on security and trying to make our shelter system better, and we will, I think what is really clear in this message is that we certainly have a safer emergency shelter system than these encampments. I also want to stress we've invested millions of dollars in security around our shelter providers to try to be able to make them as safe as possible environment. You're right, whenever you're dealing with large populations like this, crime will follow. But we're very confident that we've put in the tools to be able to make our shelters as safe as possible.
You push back against Amarjeet Sohi, the mayor of Edmonton, with his declaration of a homelessness emergency in Edmonton. You called it bizarre and really kind of dismissed it as a political stunt. But when you lay out all of the factors, these encampments being taken down by police, the gang infiltration as you describe it, the sort of criminal activity happening there, and the sheer number of people and number of camps, how is that not an emergency? And does that political issue now get in the way of you and the mayor working together on things?
Well, the mayor and I work together very well. He was just over at the Alberta Legislature with me a few days ago with all of my department, several other ministries, and all of Edmonton City Council, where we were briefing each other on the issues that we're working on. And we will continue to work together to be able to benefit Albertans and make sure that we advocate for the issues that matter to Edmontonians. I think City Council's decision to pass an emergency motion that they made clear will do nothing, provides no other resources, and changes the circumstances on the ground in no way, was a waste of time. It was a political stunt, and I will stand by that. The Alberta's government instead has been very much focused on immediate and real concrete action that we are undertaking to address this issue. We're calling on the City of Edmonton to continue to support us in that effort. And I think for the people of Edmonton and the people of Alberta, they don't want us to talk and have motions and committees. What they want us to do is take action. And what you saw with the Alberta government yesterday was clear action on a very important issue. Action
sometimes requires focus, though, right? And people putting political pressure on people to act. I mean, the data I've read, Minister, is there's twice as many homeless people in Edmonton or people without housing in Edmonton than there were before the pandemic. I mean, that kind of rate and the issues you've documented, for a municipality, that would certainly be urgent, if not an emergency situation, would it not?
But the government is already taking action. So I can tell you the mayor's motion has not put any more urgency on me than we already have. The premier has made clear to us, has put together a cabinet committee that has the Edmonton Chief of Police as well as multiple Indigenous leaders on it who have been given a task to immediately deal with this issue, and we are immediately dealing with this issue. So adding motions to it that just make it sound like something can be accomplished that can't, I think is unhelpful. But again, I mean, I'm okay. I mean, let the City of Edmonton do that. It doesn't benefit the city at all. But the province is focused on immediate, real, concrete action to get results on this very important issue.
Minister Jason Nixon, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me on.